Hello, everybody. This is Pasha Marlowe, and this is the Let Pleasure Be the Measure podcast. And today's guest is a fantastic, phenomenal woman and a dear friend. Libby Bunten is here today. Woo! I hope that some of you will be able to watch this podcast as well as listen, because Libby is hot. Libby is fire, and she's glowy all the time. I see her, she just inspires me, which leads me to my opening, which is a diary entry. I have never read a diary or journal entry on this show before. It's totally juicy. And so this is scary. I haven't been scared to do an interview yet on this podcast, but I'm like, oh shit. But my mission is to speak radical truths and inspire women to do the same. So of course I shall as well. So you won't know this perhaps, but in, what was it? I guess September 2019, you invited me to go purse shopping. We were going to meet up, but we ended up going purse shopping. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you realize how impactful that day was on so many levels. One, I was wearing shorts for the first time because of you, because you posted this fabulous picture on the internet where you were basically wearing lingerie in the street. And I was like, I am so shameful of my body. I'm not liberated at all. It just reflected back to me all of my body shame and how much I desired. Like, I took the jealousy and the envy of looking at you in that photo, and I realized that it was my desire to have like a fraction of that liberation and reclamation. And so when I met you, I terrified, I put on shorts, and you didn't know that I was scared, but you're like, look at you in your shorts. And I'm like, ah. So anyhow, we go shopping, and then you start buying purses. And I've never been in that Coach, was it? Mm-hmm. It's like a fancy store. Okay. I have consignment stores, and then everything else is fancy stores. We went in a fancy fuck store, and you were looking at purses, and I didn't even know, because I don't have a purse. I didn't even know purses look like that or cost that much. It was like this alien experience. Mm-hmm. And you were talking about buying things for your pleasure and for your desire. And then you started saying things like, "'cause I'm worth it." And I'm like, what am I missing? What is going on? So I go home and I write in my diary, my new friend Libby, I feel like an 8-year-old. My new friend Libby inspired me to unapologetically wear shorts today. It was terrifying. I thought I would feel embarrassed, judged. I wonder what people will think. Like, why is she wearing those? That's not flattering. And the story I tell myself is that I'm not enough, not worthy of showing skin, not worthy of showing off, not worthy of living large or even being a fitness trainer. Like, who am I to be a fitness trainer if I'm not even ripped? I want to let that shit go. I want to let go of the fear and the negative self-talk. I want to fire my inner bitch. I walk around thinking I'm not worthy of nice cars, nice houses, expensive clothes. I don't even have a purse. I went on and on and on. And then at the end of a very long entry, I said, okay, I have lack mentality. These are all words I didn't even know what they meant until I met you. I have lack mentality, and this shit is going to have to change. This is also the first time I probably swore in my diary, thanks to you. I think I have a book in me, and maybe I'm even going to be a rock star one day. And then something like the next week, I signed up. So it's all your fault. All your fault. And then everything just snowballed from there. So yes to all of that liberation and freedom. And thank you for bringing me on that journey. And I know you were just doing what you do, so it probably didn't seem extraordinary, but for me, it was a life-changing day. So thank you. Thank you, Libby. Thank you.
Oh my God. Pasha, I have total chills. That really super turns me on. And I just want to receive that it had that impact. I just want to receive that for a second and marinate in it because it's so wild. I love this idea. Like what's coming up to me right now is this idea of the impact of one person's
Yes.
self-approval.
Yes.
And this, we're kind of passing this torch of self-approval to each other. And also, I remember how fucking hot you looked. I was like, shit, why is she not showing those gams off more? Like, what is going on here? And I remember we had like a really juicy conversation in the car when I was dropping you off. And I remember when you decided to do Rockstar Camp and how much joy it brought me to watch you approve of that decision. So I'm just totally honored to be here. And I love talking to amazing women about stuff like this and you in particular. So I'm pumped to be here.
Well, yay. That sets the context for what's to come because we have so many juicy things to talk about. By the way, forgot to mention, Libby, the little things like, I don't know, your bio, is a brilliant feminine leader, a phenomenal coach, and a regional vice president with Arbonne. She's also, just like me, a previous therapist. We have so many similarities, which actually, when I thought about today preparing for this, I was like, we have so many similarities from being a therapist to past trauma to deep grief and body shame. And I'm like, I am way late to the game and have so much catching up to do. And so I can't wait for you to be able to tell your story. So first of all, how do you define pleasure?
Oh my God. I don't know if we have enough time. But I'll see where I can, like, what access point comes to me today.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'll put a little context before I answer the question is that if you had asked me that question a couple of years ago, I would have had no fucking access point because I was drowning in pain. Pleasure wasn't even in the vocabulary. I was just pretending. And the really crazy thing is nobody would have known it. So to be on a podcast about pleasure and have that be the question just 2 short years later is mind-blowing. So one of the things I guess that's most important for me to share about how I define pleasure is not just what it means, but that it's not something that's just external of us. We are taught in this culture, at least where I grew up, I don't know about everyone who's listening, but specifically as women, that pleasure is activated only from outside and that we can't activate it inside. And the thing is without our internal activators or, system, there is no pleasure.
Yes.
There is no pleasure without us. So that's a little bit about what I think about pleasure, but also pleasure is freedom.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great answer. Yes, yes. So many people have assumed, because I call it let pleasure be the measure, that we're talking about sex and sexuality. And I've heard you say in your work that you started to bring flirtiness and sensuality into your work, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're bringing sex or sexuality into your work. How do you define that?
Well, yeah, I mean, sex too, and self-pleasure too. Of course, we don't want to leave that out of the mix. But yeah, using the power of the pleasure that lives within us to shine, like, why did we think it's off the table to flirt in business? I do enrollment calls for another program, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. I interview people who are looking at a program outside of my business. It's something that I'm like the biggest fan of. It's why you and I are even having this conversation.
Yep.
But I have those conversations, and Oh my gosh, I just lost my train of thought. What was the
You were saying that you flirt with
Oh, yeah,
people
I
on your calls.
Yes, exactly. It's like blind dating. I like love the flirtation of sales and the back and forth. And we don't allow ourselves, because we're programmed not to, we don't allow ourselves to flirt in business. We don't allow ourselves to be playful or make mistakes like I just did. You know, that would be perceived as like, oh God, no, like turn it off. We got to start over.
Edit.
Exactly, in my past. And we get to bring that. And also, there is power in a woman's ownership of her sexuality. Like
Yes.
my sexual radiance can transcend into how I do business. It doesn't mean I'm going and having sex with my business partners, but what it means is I get to be in my sexual energy, even when I'm speaking on a podcast.
Yes.
You know?
Absolutely. And maybe for you, maybe the sexuality and sensuality was already there, and then you brought it into your business. And strangely enough, for me, I had to step into my power and confidence and like actually write the book, actually launch the podcast, actually finish Rockstar Camp before I felt like I could embrace the sensuality and sexuality. So it's so interesting, but there's absolutely intertwined.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you know, when I was younger, to point back to what you just said, when I was younger, there was a period of my life where I was super uh, outgoing with my sexuality, I guess. And then I started to dismantle my confidence around it. And that was part of what was killing me too, when I found some of this work that you and I have been doing together a couple of years ago. And I had so much shame around it, and it was debilitating. And I actually remember my mom passed away, 5 or 6 years ago, but I remember when I was younger struggling with the impact of my sensuousness, because it was something that just was there. And I remember my mom saying to me, "You're a very sensual person, and this is something that you will learn to be comfortable with."
Nice. So wonderful that she gave you that gift and message.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm. Mhm.
that's beautiful.
Mm.
And you give that so readily and freely. Just before this call, I was literally like sitting here preparing, researching Libby in a turtleneck and black pants. And then you posted something on Instagram, like getting ready for a pleasure podcast. I'm like, that looks like fun. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, that's my pleasure podcast.
Yeah.
Wait, if my guest is showing up, inner sexy sensualness, and what am I doing? Like, why am I in my body, not yours? Oh my God. Yeah. She's got this is why I videotape, because you have to go to YouTube, y'all, to see that. And in your honor, Libby, like, well, there's nipplage here. There's no bra. There's no.
Oh, yes. Yes.
I'm
Yes.
gonna go
Yes.
cleavage. I'm gonna sell this podcast sooner or later. And so please subscribe to my podcast. Please review my please subscribe, share, and review. The nipplage doesn't actually show up in this dress. So
No, unfortunately, I can't see it.
But we've learned through our work with Meg and Joe, who we'll talk to about in just a moment, that gosh, I used to think that was anything from reckless to dangerous to dirty to naughty to immature. I could go on. It certainly wasn't going to be for like a menopausal woman of 50 who feels saggy and is parenting a sick kid. I'm like, I'm not going to take my underwear off. Thank you very much. Y'all can spread your pussy juice on the stage, whatever you're doing. I'm going to call home and be, respectful and mature. And then I'm like, why can't I do that?
Let me in.
Why is it not working? And I hadn't reached, even though I totally thought I had reached rock bottom, I really hadn't. I hadn't fully reached rock bottom. So the breakdown hadn't ended and the breakthrough hadn't fully started even after the performance. So we're talking about Meg and Joe Wilson's Rockstar Camp. And it's like you said in the beginning, Libby, it's like hard to imagine not honoring her and her work, because she's so much a part of, she's in my head, she's in my body, and she's in my work, and she's probably in my sexuality too. I told her she made me buy. Okay, so
Yeah, so good.
this is why I need an editing team, Libby.
Or not.
Oh geez. Okay. Rockstar Camp. How did you find it? And thank you for bringing me to it.
Oh my God. Thank you for coming with me to it and crossing the threshold with me. So, Rockstar Camp, well, first of all, I was a secret fangirl of Megan Jo's singing for a long time. And every time I would see her, I would be like, who is this mysterious goddess? And she was in a band with one of my good friends. And I was like, introduce me to that girl. Like, who is that? And she just kind of felt like, we have all this friend crossover and we never connected. It was so strange, but I would see her everywhere and feel so attracted to her. So that was going on for years. And I started following her on Instagram and I saw her publish her book, Who the Fuck Am I to Be a Coach, the first one. And I was like, oh, yes, I'll take that free book. And I wasn't working as a coach in the traditional sense. At that time, I was actually coaching in my Arbonne business, which is an enormous amount of what I do. So anyway, I started following that thread and I was like, that sounds interesting. Then I saw her start to promote Rockstar Camp. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, I'm dying inside. Yeah. Everybody thinks I'm great. People come to me for their problems. Oh, you're so blah, blah, blah. All the things that we're taught to wear on the outside, I was wearing on the outside, and on the inside, I was just expiring. It was hell. So I'm like army crawling through life. I see her advertise Rockstar Camp and I'm like, what the fuck? Like something just sparked inside of me. And I always wanted to be a performer when I was a child. And I started to shut that part of myself down when I got a little bit older as some life losses happened and trauma happened. So my voice, I started shutting down. I didn't want to be seen. I started intentionally gaining weight. I realize now to disappear. So I see Rockstar Camp being advertised and I'm like, I got to check this goddess out. Like, what is happening? So I messaged her on Instagram, didn't hear back for a little bit. And she's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that, it took me a minute to get back. What's up? Who are you? Let's talk. So we chatted and I just got it when she told me what she does. And I went to a showcase. And for those of you who don't know, the people who are in the coaching program for 8 weeks when COVID isn't happening, there's an in-person retreat where you actually sing on stage. You probably heard on Pasha's other podcast. And I went and I watched these women cross this threshold and I cried through the whole thing. I didn't know any of them. And I was like, somebody, like, hell fucking yes. Somebody show me the way. You're showing the way. How did you get these women on stage like this? We fell in love on a date. When we went on a date after that and she invited me to Mama Gena, went to Mama Gena for a weekend, cried for a week straight when I came home because I had so much hell, like emotional hell living in my tissue that I never allowed myself to express. Fell apart for a week, was totally financially strapped and still spent the last chunk of money I had to do Rockstar Camp. And I have to give a big shout out to my husband, Paul, for not letting me talk myself out of it when we had other stuff to pay for.
Not only that, but then after that Rockstar Camp, he went on to do Rockstar Camp and you're like, I still have work to do. And then you did it again. And now you're do you call it a team? Now you're part of Rockstar Camp. And
yeah, I'm like her wing woman.
I'm like, okay, the opposite of jealousy is compersion. I'm supposed to just be happy for you because I love you. No.
Well, jealousy, Mama Gena's theory on jealousy is that it's a super powerful compass.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I want that. Yeah. Because Megan Jo outside of Rockstar Camp, she's hard to find and talk to. It's hard to pin that woman down for even a handshake.
I know,
so
right?
Like unapproachable. I like, yeah, I'm still scared of her.
Oh my God.
But yeah, she's amazing, obviously. And Mama Gena, also just an inspiration and a revolutionary voice and feminine leadership and reclamation and worthiness. And you do amazing work through Arbonne in your coaching. Can you tell us more about why that lights you up so much?
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, I think one thing that is a theme throughout my whole life is I love cheering other women on. I love lifting other women up. And it was something that I never really acknowledged about myself until it was acknowledged by others to me so much that I started to believe them. And I remember actually the first time I did Rockstar Camp, Megan Jo was like cycling through on Facebook featuring the people who were going to be on stage. And she posted a picture of me and she was like, I looked everywhere for pictures of Libby by herself, but she is constantly celebrating other women. And they're all pictures of me and other women. So
Interesting.
yeah, a huge part of what I do in Arbonne, of course, like I have taught men how to do the business, but a huge part of what I do is talk to women about what they don't want any more of, what they do want more of, and how they can build a vessel in a community of sisterhood and support to create another way of earning and to also grow themselves through the process, because in entrepreneurship you won't your pay will never outgrow you. Like it's always in proportion. So that's a huge part of what I do. And when I was suffering in my Arbonne business, I was not celebrating myself at all for any of the small wins. So a huge part of what I've done is taken the things that I've learned from Mama Gena and Rockstar Camp and Megan Jo and so many other brilliant women like you and Monica and women in my community, and brought that into the culture of my Arbonne team now. So tons of celebration. I make people brag about themselves if they apologize needlessly. We do dance breaks and all kinds of stuff like that. So yeah, I love lifting other women up in that vessel, but also there is nothing more satisfying to the raised by a single mom in me person than helping a woman make money.
Nice. Oh, to be independent and self-sufficient.
Yeah. And to have more resources, because when there's more resources, there's more space to shine your gifts. And for someone, that might mean enough for a car payment. For someone else, it might be enough to create like mission work and everything in between. So it's really amazing because it's a very flexible vessel for, you can tailor it to each individual's dreams.
It's so beautiful. And you mentioned your mom, and the mother wound is deep, right? And we share that as well. And I've heard you say this on another podcast. So I'm just curious if it's something that you would allow us to reflect on for a moment. You said that you needed to lose her to get to where you are now. And that struck a deep, deep chord, as I'm currently letting people go who do not accept my new reclamation of my own sexuality and in through the book. And so that process of letting go, which I know is necessary, is also extremely painful. So I'm curious for you, what that meant that you had to let her go.
Oh, there's so much in there. But the thing is I was so enmeshed with my mother's story that I didn't realize that I actually legitimately thought I was living her life. It was like having a pair of glasses on that were all foggy. And through intense amounts of grief work and falling apart and breaking through and all the things in between, I realized, I will never forget it. I was on a call with a mentor of mine in Arbonne. And that's one of the things, is like, it attracts so many different walks of life of women with amazing different skill sets and experience. And this woman has always mentored me through my business, and she's just a dream. But she and I were having a conversation, and I had this moment where I realized I am not my mother. And she's like, no, you're not your mother. And I was like, no, I mean, I'm like literally not her. It was almost like I was possessed by her her story, and she had mental health stuff because of really significant trauma history. And she, had alcoholism. I mean, I was so woven into it that it was like peeling myself out of her context when I realized that. So it was wild. It was terrifying because I was like, if she's gone and I do this, what does that mean then? Like, am I separating myself from the relationship we had?
Mhm.
And then I realized, no, I actually just get to be her daughter.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then in being her daughter, it allows you to have the ability to nurture and frankly mother so many
Mm.
of your clients and friends. And someday, right?
Mhm.
Maybe a little more.
Yes. Yes, yes.
Are you practicing a lot?
That's the goal.
Are you practicing?
Not ever as much as I'd like to. I'm insatiable, ask Paul.
I admire that about you. I love that. I love that. It's and that you've always been so unapologetic about self pleasure, solo sex, all the things. And yeah, that's my next frontier. And I've been open about that. I'm still working on it, but I'm wondering for you, because this isn't about me, thank God, right now. What still scares the shit out of you? What's the next frontier for you?
Oh God, Pasha, of course you had to ask that. Well, I'm currently on the precipice of terror in a couple things.
Okay.
Um, I still have a ton of shit about visibility. So like what I've learned through the work with Mama Gena and Megan Joe and being in the sisterhood with other amazing women, is that I can go test and I won't die. Like I have a place to go back and say, okay, I did it. I feel like I'm going to die, but I didn't actually die. So I'm always playing with that and weaving in pleasure with the terror,
Okay.
it's like the thing that keeps me going along.
Yeah.
So I did just wrap a year of the grad program with Megan Joe, which feels like, we were ready, and it's like, it's grieving. We're
Yes.
grieving our weekly celebration and stuff like that. And I had this moment of, I do have a huge goal in my Arbonne business, but I was like, I know myself enough that I need to be in a space where I am being called forth regularly, where I cannot hide, or at least put myself in that space if I'm not in a group. So be careful what you pray for, because as soon as I said that, two things came into my sphere. One is work in a program called Your Mat to Your Memoir that Monica Rogers, that we both know and love, invited me to. And she has this way of calling me forth, and she knows that I have a book or several volumes of books inside of me, and that it's like the ultimate terror to me. And I know you can relate, and I can't wait for your book signing. So I resisted it at first. And then actually my naturopath and my husband were both like, we think the best thing, they separately said, for healing, like they reflected to me, this is, this. It's like when I signed up for Rockstar Camp, that writing this thing is going to heal. The other thing that I'm playing with right now is Jaya's erotic blueprint work. Have you heard of this?
I have. Somebody else mentioned it just the other day. Yes, I have.
Yeah. So I just started working, playing around with that. We took the blueprint quiz, and I did not realize that our sister goddess Stephanie Redlener is a coach in the erotic blueprint model. Well, she's finishing her coaching. And so I brag that I'm starting to dig into some of that work. Now it's super exciting, and I have insane shit around my body, like insane amounts of shame, no empathy for myself, rattling constant reel of self, shit in my mind. And I'm still learning. I'm still putting myself in the process, So those are the things that are currently terrifying me as far as leadership stuff goes.
Yes. Beautiful and brave. And you have a soft place to land.
Yeah.
If it gets too scary.
Mm-hmm.
And so with this erotic blueprint, can you share what it is that scares you most about it?
Yes. Let me think about that because I think there's so much that scares me about it. So of course it's like, it's one of those things where I was like, yes, when I learned about what it was, something in my body said yes. My mind said, that's
Mhm.
bullshit. You don't need another thing, blah, 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 all the things that our minds
Mhm.
do. But my body was a yes. So I I have like a sexual trauma history. I also love pleasure and sex in that, pleasure is defined by that. And I've had a lot of struggle with being understood in how I express myself sexually. Well, turns out I took the erotic blueprint quiz and the type that I have. And the thing I love about things like this is that there's no right or wrong, there's no better or worse or good or bad.
Yes.
It's like it all belongs.
Mhm.
And how can you learn to have more fun and play in the context of it. But I learned that my type is actually often really misunderstood, and feeling like you don't get to fully express yourself. And because of that. And also I brag that it said that I'm the Jedi Knight of sexual types. So that hooked me. I was like, okay, Jedi Knight, I can do that. I've done Jedi Knight in other areas of my life. So it's fun and also, scary because I have a history of checking out of my body when I'm having sex. Um,
Dissociating?
what's that?
Dissociating or different?
Yeah, dissociating. My body knows what to do,
Yeah.
and I will literally just leave. Like my mind will take me somewhere else
Yes.
sometimes, not always. And, of course, being with a loving partner who I trust has helped me with so much healing around that. And we still misunderstand each other so much. We have so much sex stuff like that we're working on,
Mhm.
and so it scares me a little to be doing the work on my own and then bringing it back to him. So that's scary. But also, I'm like deeply committed
Yes.
to figuring it out.
And yeah, you're relentless about keep diving back in no matter how scary it is. But I get what you mean, that the terror is also the thrill.
Mhm.
Um, and the living large, playing out loud. I love all that.
Mhm.
But you did bring up Paul, your husband. So you're expanding and growing and evolving and learning and unlearning and becoming a Jedi sex master, whatever. And
That
and
means,
he's like, all right now. I mean, I'm just curious because I feel like I'm expanding beyond my marriage at the moment in a lot of ways.
yeah.
And is that dynamic? I find it so interesting. And it must come up for you with the women that you coach in our
Mhm.
bond because they're expanding. Possibly um, their incomes are for the first time above their
Mhm.
partners. And I'm talking about a traditional heteronormative, heterosexual relationship, of course. So I'm wondering what the dynamics are there for you, either for you or just on the whole, whichever you'd rather talk about.
Well, I mean, I think my wheelhouse is definitely myself. So
Back to
it's
me.
it's interesting because I think I worry about it more than Paul does. And then I'm like, it's so interesting that I'm projecting that onto him. So when I was in the grad program for Megan Joe's after Rockstar Camp, I came to one of the calls having a meltdown about my fear of outgrowing my partner. And turns out it's not a fear of his. I needed to go and unpack a lot. And what was uncovered is that he's going to leave me. That was my fear,
Yeah.
that I would be too much.
Mhm.
When I dig in, usually if I keep digging in layer, it's usually I'm too much. I will be left. I will be abandoned.
Yes.
And so when I, to bring it back to like current circumstances, when I told him about the erotic blueprint coaching, I was like, this is going to have an impact on your life too. And he's like, are you kidding me? Like that's what we do here. Like this, it's like the Libby roller coaster. Like this is just what I signed up for. And so he's, definitely a good sport. And I'm sure there are plenty of partners out there who wouldn't complain about their partner learning more about pleasure and sexuality. And he's got a great sense of humor.
Yeah. Do you struggle with COVID? because it's sometimes redundant and we don't have our fun outlets, we can't hug on our friends. I would think somebody who's just a creative genius like you would be struggling with the boredom, even though you're so full and abundant with all of your activities. Does it still feel boring and like restless?
Oh God, yes. I've been
Okay.
like totally fallen into the trap of like doom scrolling on Instagram, like I call it like emotional cutting, like you feel like shit. So you're going to go eat a frozen pizza, drink a bottle of the worst wine and watch Bridget Jones's Diary. That is a place that I own.
Yes.
Like I own real estate there. But yeah, it's boredom. I don't know if it's boredom, it's more avoidance. And I get in a really dark place sometime. And I actually have recently found out I have some like major thyroid issues going on, which is super fun when you have lots of body shame. But I get really dark when I get dark. And the other day I was like gazing out the window long and I'm like, God, it's so gorgeous out there. And then I was like, wait a second, those aren't prison bars. Like I can actually go out there, like what the hell am I doing?
I'm locked in my house.
Let me out. And it's like the dog's just like dying for me to take him out there. So yeah, I wouldn't say boredom, but more avoidance. I will say I'm bored AF with looking at the walls in my house. Yes. I do deeply love travel. I've traveled all over the world. It is like soul medicine. And I also love touching women, like hugging women, smelling women's hair, being physically around women. I keep saying to Meg and Joe, like, when this is done, put me under a pile of women. Like, that's all I want. It's just different. I love Paul. He's a great hugger, but yeah, no, it's not the same.
I'm actually wondering if the last person who grabbed my butt was you.
Most likely, right? Well, considering I try to do it every time I see you. Please, yes.
I had to get a mammogram for somebody to fill me up.
Oh my God. I love you.
Oh my goodness. So you're stuck in your house.
Stuck in my house.
Yes, I know it's hard. It's tricky. And are you imagining that when the world opens up again and you can go out and hug on people and go to the theater and go to the concerts and all the things you love, are you going to be even more wild? I just am curious, like, what's that going to look like? Do you know?
That is a really great question. And it's funny you should ask because I've actually thought about this.
Okay.
So 2 things. One, with the erotic blueprint, I'm like, if I figure more of this out, like, am I going to just implode with like horniness? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I weirdly, like, I have this ability to put on extroversion and I get myself psyched up for it. And I really get energized by being around the right people. And I get energized by being put on the spot. I get energized in that moment by being put on the spot. Then I need tons of recovery time usually.
Yes.
But my concern, I guess, that I've been tossing around is like, am I going to be terrified to be around people? Like, am I going to, because I'm one of those people, and I think a lot of people are this way. Prior to Rockstar Camp, one of the problems I was having is I was just hiding and isolating more, like pulling away more and more. And in this circumstance, it's like, we don't have a lot of choice around that. So what will the impact of that be? Now, it could really go either way with me, Pasha, you know this. Like,
go either way too, Libby.
I mean, I did go out in the street in my underwear for the men's Rockstar Camp with good reason. I was a backup dancer, but so who knows what's possible once they let me out of this thing.
You're going to be at Bubba's dancing naked. I don't know.
God, or in a hazmat suit. Like, who knows?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's going to be a wild ride, and it's going to be fun to see. I wonder, I actually, to your point about feeling stuck and needing to travel, it's gotten to the point where yesterday we took pictures. We're putting our house on the market. because I can't look at the same four walls all the time. I love my house.
Yeah.
I'm moving a mile away to look at different walls. That's a sickness. Well, it's ADHD, but whatever. I'm just going to call it creativity and a little restlessness.
Variety.
I need some variety. But yeah, we have to create it, right? Because who knows how long we're going to be feeling this sense of restriction.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah. Yes.
COVID it seems that when crisis happens, people become more so. And whatever that is, whatever more so is for that person, it has been so revealing. I mean, look at the wounds it's revealed for the world, specifically this country. It's like, wow, we do not know how to deal with pain and grief. Wow, we do not know how to talk about hard things. Like, and it's been really revealing on the individual level too. So absolutely. I mean, as Monica says, more to be revealed. Like, who knows what we're looking at 6 months from now.
Exactly. And we're so fortunate to have people like you who have already been through so much and been resilient and persistent and you did so much hard work prior to COVID that now you're able to hold space for friends and clients and people who are maybe for the first time feeling their world turned upside down. So
crisis is like Thanksgiving with family. For me, I'm well trained.
I'm actually worse when there's not a crisis going on. Not that I don't think I manifest them, but it's just like, really? Let's do another crisis. Oh, okay. Let's pile that on top. But then if I have a day where nothing goes wrong, I'm feeling quite uncomfortable in my skin that I'm supposed to just relax and enjoy life. Even though I'm doing this pleasure podcast, it's hard. I'm doing it mainly because it's been such a struggle and so much a part of my healing. And that I've seen it transform so many women, but it's hard to accept the pleasure if you're used to pain, right?
Yeah. And I always love to say, we teach best what we need most.
Yes.
It's like we always have to take the marching orders first, as Megan Jo says, like we follow the marching orders first, and then we like grab the hand and bring the person along. And it's the brilliance of women. This is what we do. We find a way and we're like, hey, come this way.
Yes. And how are you different? I've been curious about this because I'm not Mama Gena, I'm not Megan Jo, I'm not you, like, and you're not all of them. And so how do you feel you're unique and set yourself apart in your work and your brilliance?
Oh my gosh. Well, one of my spiritual gifts is connection. I just have the ability, it's kind of like what we were just saying. I have the ability to just drop right in with people, and I see the untold story. I've said this before and I've heard it enough over the course of my life that I really understand this is like a superpower. It was part of why I really struggled as a therapist, because I was hearing so much of the painful story, and I was also watching the untold story like a movie screen behind people. I could not turn it off. So to be doing that for my work all day, and then to leave and have that also just be so present when I was being with the people who are in my personal relationships, it was just like killing me. But it's, I just have this ability to just drop right in with people. And I think, to speak to what you said, what you reflected to me about when you go to the depths of hell and you can like dig your way out, it gives you the ability, people can feel when you understand. It's not a like a logical experience. It's a physical experience when somebody understands. And I have been told enough, like I said, and I take ownership of it now. I do have the ability to really be with people. And it doesn't matter if I know them. I do calls with women all over the world. And we realize, I actually had a woman in Africa just say to me the other day, she said, I thought this was this suffering of women not being able to speak up and tell their truth and be successful. I thought this was a women in Africa thing, but what I'm realizing is it's a woman thing. And we just had the most incredible conversation. So I love connection, and I'm good at connection. And I'm also one of those people who's really motivated by helping people look at the discomfort and looking at my own discomfort to move into better circumstances. So like, you know, to reach the level I'm in Arbonne, of course I wanted that outcome, but I had to actually tap into the things that were not working in my life that I could, they were no longer negotiable to suffer with, to the point where it would make me cry. And I said, I have a solution to this. How dare I not do that? So I do have the ability to do that too. And I also laugh a lot and I have a really fucking good time.
Swear a lot. You laugh a lot.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. You've inspired me in so many ways, Libby. And you hold space for people so beautifully. And I see that, I don't know if it's called clairvoyance or a psychic ability, or if it's just a gift you have of being able to see the real story beyond the mask and beyond the words. And so much so that, like, beware if you spend an hour with Libby on or off a call, like, be really scared if you're with her in person, because she'll feel your butt, but also she'll
with consent,
but she'll change you. So yeah, warning. But always for the better, because you're really just reflecting back to us who we forgot we were, and our birthright for being worthy of pleasure and joy and sexuality and power and all the things that we thought we weren't worthy of. Yes, I adore you and respect you and honor you and miss you. I miss hugging you. And I hope to see you in person soon. But yeah, until then, thank you so much for coming and spending this time with us today, Libby. Thank you.
It was a deep pleasure of mine, of course. Thank you. And terrifying at the same time.
I love it, but that's what you love. I remember you saying you love interviews. I'm like, well, then I'm not going to prepare you, because the reason why you love them is because they're organic and improvisational and spontaneous and kind of scary. So
and flirtatious,
right?
At least when it's us.
That's so not. I can't even do cleavage sexy. That's not the way to do it. I like. I'll have to learn. Okay, you'll have to teach me once you get through that erotic blueprint. Like, I'm going to go to you as a erotic consultant or whatever you're going to call it.
I don't know what's going to transpire.
Oh my goodness. How can people find you if they want to reach out to you, Libby?
Honestly, I love Instagram. I'm like an Instagram hoe for show. It's Libby Loving Life on Instagram is my handle, libby.loving.life. And I'm on Facebook as Libby Bunten Farrell. Those are my favorite things. I actually really like social media because I can literally connect. I feel like, websites can be valuable, but it's static and it's not the same. So, yeah, I have links to book calls for Megan Jo's program to talk to me about how I can serve people with Arbonne if that's something that they're looking to do. So yeah, those are the best places.
Yes. So if you want to connect with Libby, flirt with Libby, be empowered by Libby, follow her. I'll put the links, of course, into the show notes. And if anybody wants to continue the conversation with me, reach out to Pasha at pashamarlow.com or the website pashamarlow.com. The Facebook and Instagram and Clubhouse are also Pasha Marlow. Yes. And you can buy a book that I wrote called My Next Husband Will Be a Lesbian, because duh, look at Libby, right? I'm no fool.
Love you, Posh.
Oh my gosh. I adore coaching because I see the power in it and the magic that transpires because I've been coached by people as brilliant as Libby. And that's why I am standing here today hosting a podcast. So thank you, Libby, for the liberation. I'm sure you've used your name for liberation. Libby, the liberator.
The liberator was my bowling name. I brag.
Okay. I was hoping it'd be your erotic name, but no, Jedi. Thank you, Jedi Master Libby.
My pleasure.
All right. Bye, all. Love you, Libby.
Love you too.